Hi, my name is Marilyn van Skalkwyk, and I argue that a corporation should not employ workers in foreign countries under the same conditions as American workers. Firstly, there is an inverse relationship between market labor regulations and innovation. Earlier in 2016, Balaze-Guerre summarized the macroeconomic evidence that was compiled in a 30-year study conducted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation among their 34 member countries. The focus of this study was to investigate the drivers of multi-factor productivity on a country's economics. Multi-factor productivity, or MFP, reflects the overall efficiency with which labor and capital inputs are used together in the production process. Changes in MFP reflect the effects of changes in management practices, organizational change, general knowledge, network effects, spillovers from production factors, adjustment costs, economies of scale, and the effect of imperfect competition and measurement errors. Growth in MFP is measured as a residual. That is the part of gross domestic product growth that cannot be explained by changes in labor capital inputs. In simple terms, therefore, if labor and capital inputs remained unchanged between two periods, any changes in output would reflect changes in MFP. Through his analysis, Guerre was able to confirm that increased labor market regulations may result in higher levels of product market regulations. Nicolette and Scarpet proved in 2003 that more stringent market regulations have a restrictive influence on MFP, and that negatively impacts on innovation and development due to regulatory restrictions. According to Isaacson, it is common wisdom that higher innovation and expenditure in research and development, along with trade openness, leads to elevated MFP at the macroeconomic level. Secondly, increased standardization of regulations and standards in labor market leads to economic policies that reduce the competitive edge of these markets. Gilbert Sate et al. Concluded a study in May of 2016 that indicated that firms can take advantage of the market power induced by product market anti-competitive regulations to charge higher production prices, which generates higher profits. Workers can capture a share of these profits through their wages, which varies with their bargaining power, itself largely influenced by labor market regulations. Sate found that the European countries can expect significant gains in multi-factor productivity over time from economic policies reforming anti-competitive regulations on the product and labor markets. This less regulated environment allows the corporations the flexibility to exercise their lower-cost competitive edge to gain additional business. Lastly, I believe that there is a big shift in economic focus towards the rising powers such as China, Brazil, and India, from being global producers to global consumers. As Khalid Nadvi states in his research on rising powers and labor and environmental standards, the core question that arises is how might these countries influence the rules of the game that pertain to international trade, particularly those relating to process standards associated with labor conditions and environmental impacts. With the economic power shift also comes a realignment of policies and standards, including that of labor governance, and this would require these role players to weigh in on these issues. Commentators such as Kaplinsky and Faruqi fear that states, firms, and consumers from the rising powers could engage a race to the bottom in global competition, marked by declining labor standards, poorer working conditions, and growing environmental degradation. Nadvi's research, however, shows that there is an increasing evidence that public and private parties within these rising powers are becoming more vocal on these issues in both national and global context. This is why I argue that there should be a wider input on labor standards and governance that will take these into account. The need for continued high innovation in all areas. allowances for competitive flexibility, and the growing voices within the rising global economies, rather than a blanket implementation of American standards. Thank you.